Hey, what's up? It's Nicola Milan, and today I'm going to take you through how I organise my charts for gigs. So this is really, really important to know. It can basically make you a hated singer or a popular one, and it can also affect how good your songs sound. So this is specifically, like my setup specifically for jazz and blues singers, but if you're doing cover songs at pubs, folk music or pop music or whatever, that also applies to you. A couple of reasons quickly why you need to have your chart books organised. First of all, because they're more often than not, you won't necessarily have a dedicated band. And this is very common in the world of jazz and blues, where you will just do a gig and they'll hire you to do a gig at a cafe or a restaurant, and they'll be like, yeah, it's a duo, or yeah, it's a trio, can you perform? And then you just go and pick your favorite jazz musicians and you ring up like Ben on the piano and you say, hey, I've got a gig, this is how much it pays, can you do it? Or you might call up your favorite guitarist, and then Ben might not be available, so then you go to your second favorite guy, and it gives you a lot of flexibility because it means that you can basically gig around the world and just pick up these sorts of cafe gigs and things like that, and just grab whichever instrumentalists are available on the day. And having good chart books allows you to do that, especially if you are not doing songs from the Great American Jazz book, jazz standards and things like that, and you have some modern jazz in there, or you have a few pop songs that people may not all be familiar with, because a lot of the guys will know some of the standard songs and they can just play them in any key as long as you know your keys. They can just play them in any key and just call the song. But if you've got some slightly different songs in there, then you will need to have a jazz chart book. I go for good old-fashioned paper in a folder, and this is my collection of chart books. Heavy, yes, but I don't obviously take every single one out for every single gig, and I'm going to break down what is in this massive pile right here. I do know one singer that went and invested in iPads, and she went and got 6 or 7 of them, and then she gives them all electronic charts, which makes it really easy to keep them updated and everything. But then it's like a big financial outlay, and then because you can't obviously assume that every instrumentalist is going to have their own iPad. It's not the norm yet. So a lot of the time you're just going to go for the good old traditional paper. So before we get into what is what, a couple of bits to sort of break down what we're looking at for good charts. And you've got to make sure that your charts are good. By good, I mean making sure that the chords are correct. Nothing looks worse. Sorry, I've just got an Ewok problem. Ewok, what are you doing? I'm trying to teach. Nothing looks worse for a singer than if you rock up with a chart and the chords are funky. It basically smacks of, I don't know my chord progressions. I don't know music very well. So make sure that you've got a good chart to begin with. The other things to look out for is you want to have 4 bars to a line. As soon as you start breaking it up and having like a million bars to a line, it becomes a lot harder for the guys to follow. And basically it means that if you've got a complex song, or you really want them to sound great, but your chart is messy AF, then they are not going to be able to play it as well, because it's harder to read, and they've got to concentrate harder rather than having it all laid out where they can sort of see what's going on and which section they're in, especially if they get lost. Then they'll be able to play it better if your chart is good. The other thing is that especially piano players, I don't know why piano players, maybe all players, I don't know, this is just what I've heard from my guys, is they really like it when you have the lyrics written underneath, because if for some reason they get lost, then they can listen to what words you're saying and then pick it up with the lyrics. And it's good to, if you've got multiple pages, to like number the pages as well, just in case, because guys have a really evil tendency of like pulling all of the charts out of the chart book and then they hand them back to you like in a page, like a pile of pages. And then you have to go through and like, it just makes it super, super quick if you've just got the numbers written on the top. And then the last tip for making a good chart is to go for the easy keys. So obvious things like put it in B instead of C flat, G flat major instead of F sharp major, just because it's more of a common key. I do have songs in F sharp just because I'm an asshole. No, it was because it needed to be in that particular key, and it was an obscure song, so that was fine. But kind of just make it easy on the guys, as easy as possible. So that in a nutshell is how to make a decent chart. Oh, and I use this program called Sibelius, which I will link down below, to make it, look nice instead of having to handwrite it all out. And Sibelius is amazing because once you've got the chart in there and written, and it makes it really quick to write things out. Like, it takes a bit of a learning curve initially, but then you kind of write things out really, really quick, and then you can just transpose with the click of a button, which is what you need for when we start getting into some of the other chart books that I'm going to show you. When you start getting into combos with horn players and things like that, you will need to know how to transpose. Yeah, and it's so much quicker than writing the entire chart book out again. So this is my keys book 1. So you can see it's keys for piano. And this is kind of, the keys books tend to be my master books because, they're all going to be in treble clef. And yes, they're kind of the ones that I base everything off. So I check that one first, and then I'll go to the bass version of this, and then I've got one for drums. The drums is pretty much the same as keys, but the only difference is that the drummers will always notate different things. Okay, so this is one of my original chart books, and you can see here that the bass, like the drummer has like scribbled on it, and they will do that. It's a really common thing to do, and so that's mainly the main difference between your keys book and your drums book, is that the notation of the scribbles will be done by a drummer versus a keyboard player. I used to put all of my bass ones into bass clef, and now I don't bother, just because I have so many and I can't be bothered, and the guys are fine with reading treble clef. So I have keys, and I have bass, and then I have drums, and those are my 3 main ones, and these are all jazz charts, so covers. And then I do the exact same thing for my originals. I have original keys, I have original bass, I have original drums, because the same thing will happen. The guys will put their own scribbles on it according to the instrument. Then that covers you for a lot of gigs, but obviously we like working with horn players. So, whether you're working with a trumpet or a tenor sax or an alto sax or whatever it may be. Oh, by the way, if you work with a guitar instead of keys, they can just use the keys book. But yeah, I have tenor sax, and I tend to use tenor sax a lot more than alto sax. So, if you're hiring a horn player, just make sure you check which horn they use. I mean, a lot of them play quite a few different styles of horn, but yeah, you just want to check because they are in different keys. So I tend to use tenor sax. So I've got all of my chart books, again, originals and covers, transposed for tenor sax. And so you can see how easy it is to accumulate books, because these books are full. They're chock-a-block. I don't have any more room in them, so I've added pages in there to the point where I kind of get to 100 and then it gets too full, and then I have to start a new book. And so that's why you end up accumulating so many books. But you don't have to take them all onto a gig. You might just take your chart book 1 for like bass and keys, and that's all you need to take. Or you kind of get sick of doing those songs, and you're like, yeah, let's grab chart book 2 and we'll sing those songs today. The other thing I love to do, and this makes life so much easier for the guys when you're on the gig, is to put an index into the front of the book. This one is very messy. Here's a nice clean one that I've prepared earlier. And it's got all of my keys in there as well. So if it's a common song and the guys are just like, no, I don't need the chart, just tell me your key, you've got them all there. I mean, yes, ideally you should learn all of your keys by heart, but that always isn't the case. So yeah, I just have them there and you can easily just call a song. The other thing that I do is I put the page number next to each song so I can easily open it up. And then I write in marker page numbers down at the very bottom of all of my chart books so they can easily have a look at the index and then flip to the right page. Because I am an extremely organized person, I also put mine in alphabetical order. You don't have to go that far. Having an index kind of solves that problem, but it's just so much easier when, you know, because a lot of the guys can't be bothered going back to the index. So if it's all S's, they'll just flick through the S's until they find the right one. And sometimes if they're holding a double bass, for example, it's easier just to flick than it is to put the bass down, open the book, all the way back to the index page, find it, and then flick back, you know, because it usually requires two hands when they've got to hold their instrument. So having it alphabetized makes life super easy for the guys. And when I say guys, I mean girls as well. I work with plenty of female instrumentalists. I'm just using guys as like a generic term. If any of you out there were going, hey, you know, I'm like a kick-ass female bass player, what about me? Okay, and then last but not least with your charts are when you will work with horn combinations. I tend to use tenor sax and trumpet for my small horn combo. I mean, some people add a trombone, but it can be any kind of instruments that you usually work with. So I've put both my tenor sax and my horn either, like I have one book that's kind of replicated twice because it's got both lines in there. And the guys tend to share a book anyway on one stand because they're standing close to each other. So that would look like this. Those charts look more like this. Okay, so you can see for this one, you've got the two staves and then you've got one for trumpet, one for tenor sax. So you always put the higher instrument at the top. And then it's obviously got multiple bars per line. But this is kind of traditionally how it's written for horn players, and they are used to these kinds of charts. And it's really just got the horn lines that they're going to play notated. So it doesn't have any of the other music apart from the chords across the top. And you have to clearly make things obvious. Like I've got my repeat signs for the start. I've got my chorus written out, you know, like my different sections. So if they get lost, they can go to the start of the B section or whatever it may be. But yeah, a horn chart will typically just have the horn lines notated out. And that's that. So that is pretty much how I go about organising my chart books. And I've been complimented by many instrumentalists on the organisational level of my chart books. No, but seriously, it makes their life easier. It makes you a more popular singer because your chart books are not difficult, and it means that they can play your songs a lot better. I will link again to Sibelius below. If you have any other questions, hit me up in the comments. Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you again soon. If you would like to learn more with me, join me in my 6-week Singing Academy, an intensive singing training program for beginner singers. The link is in the description.